At the beginning of the story, we see May, a teacher in Singapore, heading to school. May is very diligent. Even though her Mandarin lessons can be a bit boring for the kids, but she stays enthusiastic. After teaching, May goes back home there. She is with her husband and her in-laws, one of whom is suffering from a stroke. Due to May's job, she hires a caregiver to accompany her in taking care of her in-law. It's all filled with love. Even with a busy schedule, May gently cares for her in-law before and after work. At night, May and her in-law wait for her husband, who often comes home late or doesn't come home at all. The next day, May goes to the hospital alone for a fertility check. The doctor says she's fertile, hoping May and her husband can try again to have a child. On her way home, May meets Roy, one of her students who is undergoing treatment. Since Roy is alone, May offers to give him a ride home in her car. Well, during the journey, May learns that Roy often stays alone because his parents are busy with overseas business. May listens to Roy's story without saying much, and both of them are busy with their own thoughts. Every day, May diligently takes fertility hormone injections. The pain has become a part of her life for years. In class, May looks out of the window, unaware that Roy is secretly taking photos of her from behind. The next day, during an exam, May suddenly receives a call from her sister waiting outside the school. May leaves the class. Almost all the students have left, except for Roy, who stays in the class. It turns out May's sister sells durians. Although the business is sometimes slow, May always helps her sister. As a thank you, her sister gives May a bag of durians. May returns to the class, not surprised to see some students have left, and she continues with the lesson. May notices that Roy always looks towards the durians she brought. May realizes that Roy is hungry, so she invites him to eat durians together. Their relationship becomes even closer from there. That night, May waits for her husband to play billiards as advised by the doctor, but her husband refuses, saying it's been 8 years with no results. The next day, May asks her husband to take care of his father because the caregiver is absent. Well, she has to work. At school, Roy asks May for permission to postpone the exam due to martial arts practice. May immediately grants permission. May is curious, so she goes to the training place and sees Roy being very enthusiastic. May recalls her youthful days full of passion without burdens. During the next exam, only Roy shows up. May receives a call from her and telling her to come home quickly to take care of her in-law. Roy says his class is not over yet, so May quickly takes Roy home. At home, Roy is shocked to see May's father-in-law paralyzed. May's father-in-law, despite being old and paralyzed, is still sharp-minded. For example, when Roy was doing homework and being assisted by May's father-in-law. After that, they had a meal together like a family, and the atmosphere became very warm with Roy's presence. The next day, while May was getting a fertility injection, she fell asleep in the car. Sometime later, the principal came and woke her up. Seeing May weak and pale, the principal allowed her to go home and rest. A few days later, May went to the hospital alone, without her husband. Her husband refused yesterday, so May decided to try in vitro fertilization. But the doctor suggested May use the latest embryo. When May called her husband, he didn't answer at all. May had to undergo the IVF process alone. A few days later, May was on her way home with Roy when she suddenly received a call from the doctor, saying that the IVF results were unsuccessful. May could only stay silent, stopped the car, and turned up the music loudly. May felt very sad about everything she had been through. The next day, Roy participated in a competition, and May came with her father-in-law to watch. Roy was amazing and became the first champion. After the competition, May invited Roy and her father-in-law to eat durians to celebrate his victory. At home, May checked the school assignments, suddenly smiled at Roy's name to the point of not realizing that the paper was soaked in ink. Being close to Roy, May regained enthusiasm for life. The next day, while on the street, May saw her husband being affectionate with another woman. May had long suspected her husband of having an affair, and witnessing it firsthand shattered her heart. May goes home, takes care of her father-in-law, deep in sorrow. She just wants a man who genuinely loves her. Seeing May sad, her father-in-law can only signal her to keep smiling. May wakes up, hears a baby crying. She immediately picks it up, but it turns out to be just a dream. It rains. May calls her father-in-law, but there's no answer. Her father-in-law has passed away, and May can't contain her grief. A few days later, May resumes teaching as usual. After teaching, May takes Roy home. In front of Roy's house, May sees Roy having a nosebleed. Concerned, May decides to accompany Roy inside the house. May, who hasn't felt the joy of playing billiards for a long time, finally plays again with her student. After that incident, Roy is determined to win May's love. Roy waits for May every day at the office, making other teachers curious about their relationship. But May is uncomfortable with Roy's excessive attention, so she gets angry and says it's all just a misunderstanding. On the way home, a disappointed Roy immediately gets out of the car, causing May to lose concentration and crash into the car in front. Disappointed Roy leaves May. The next day, May goes to school by bus. Suddenly, Roy arrives and apologizes for the previous incident. At school, Roy smiles to himself looking at the photos of May he secretly took with his phone. But suddenly, his mischievous friend takes Roy's phone, and Roy's secret is exposed. Because of that incident, Roy is called to the principal's office and asked why those photos are on his phone. Roy can only remain silent. Then the principal calls May and shows her the photos taken by Roy. As a result of that incident, May is fired from the school. Afterward, they go home together in the car. Roy wants to hug May, but she refuses, turning her face away. A few moments later, it starts raining. Roy immediately gets out of the car, followed by May. Finally, they embrace, this being the last time they meet. In short, May and her husband officially divorce after 8 years of childless marriage. A few days later, curiosity about the possibility of pregnancy still haunts her. May decides to take a pregnancy test again, and the result surprises her. Finally, after years, she is pregnant. This success is ultimately the result of Roy's hard work. At the end of the film, May returns to her hometown in Malaysia. Carrying new hope, the film concludes.